This is Chapter 8, Section 2, The Roaring Twenties. The 1920s saw a dramatic culture change in the United States. After World War I, the people were just looking for something different, and just this whole new culture rush changed America. It was a time of economic prosperity, and that kind of helped with the change of music, literature, style, just laws and beliefs. So this rapid rebellious culture changed the United States during the 20s, plus the booming economy that kind of allowed the culture change to happen with all the money that was going on, really gave the name to the Roaring Twenties. Gave the name to the 1920s as the Roaring Twenties, as they kind of roared in. It was loud, it was prosperous, and it was like one big party that would go crashing by 1929. But during the 1920s, it was a good time. So huge progressive movements for women happened in the 1920s, especially with the 19th Amendment being passed, which gave the women the right to vote. After women received the right to vote nationally, women started to have a voice in society. Now that they can vote, they joined political parties, they ran for public office, and they started getting even more jobs. The first women governors were elected in the United States, in Wyoming and Texas. So that was a big step. Young women especially took the 1920s by storm. They all of a sudden developed this new progressive attitude, and they changed their style. Shorter dresses, they were knee-high, bright, elaborate makeup, short haircuts called bobs. This was all the rage. And these vibrant young women were outspoken, and they were known as flappers. And the reason why they were known as flappers, probably there's not one specific reason where it came from, but the most popular one was that women in these times would wear these types of shoes that have like a buckle, but these girls would not, in rebellious nature, not buckle their shoes, and therefore their shoes would flap on their feet, and then they were thus called flappers. They resisted the traditional roles and behaviors of ladylike behavior. They didn't conform to the social norms of the big dresses and being ladylike and not talking to men. These flappers, they were flirtatious. They shared their opinion. They went to secret bars. They just had a good time. There wasn't a massive population of flappers in the United States, especially because they were mainly just located in, they were just mainly in cities, but they were the leading edge of pop culture. You could see they were, that's how they dressed, these big flowy, these fancy dresses. Here they are doing the Charleston, which is a dance. This is actually a lot of Halloween costumes are based off of the flapper, and you can kind of see, the difference between styles within 100 years. The flapper wore a lot more skimpier clothing with the shoulders being exposed, scandalous, and that's kind of like the strap I was talking about, with the shoes. But that was their style. They're very stylish. Then in the 1920s, prohibition fails, which is the banning of the sale and consumption of alcohol. The popular opinion was that banning alcohol would improve American lives when it was first passed, with men spending so much time at the bars and spending all their money, and the increase of domestic violence against women in the early 1900s. They were thinking alcohol would definitely stop this. And it worked at first. Public drunkenness was definitely down. Arrests were down at the beginning, but it proved impossible to enforce. Americans still had a great desire for alcohol, and so this new illegal occupation called bootlegging, came came to be. And these bootleggers were alcohol smugglers, and they would transport alcohol from Canada and the Caribbean into the United States illegally. So these bootleggers, they made an extremely large amount of money off of this smuggled alcohol because the demand was really high. When there is no alcohol to be sold in stores and you have to get it all illegally, that means that the price that they could charge for this alcohol was outstanding. The United States had secret bars called speakeasies, and they were called that because you had to speak easy, so speak quietly, so the police didn't hear you, even though the police knew about them, and a lot of the police were corrupt and weren't really bothered by these secret bars too much, especially when a lot of them would go to these secret bars themselves. The bootlegging and illegal sale of alcohol really spread the growth of organized crime. There was gang wars throughout the United States that popped up because of this bootlegging territories. Who would sell to which areas in the cities? So there was these territory wars. Al Capone, who was the head of the Italian mafia in Chicago, known as the Chicago Outfit, participated in this organized crime and all the bootlegging in Chicago. And he made hundreds of millions of dollars doing this throughout the 1920s and the illegal sale of alcohol. So they started off with bootlegging, but the criminal activities really increased into gambling, fraudulent business dealings, bribing police and government officials. So the corruption went really deep in cities, and it all was sparked by the bootlegging. Police could not stop the illegal sale of alcohol because it was just too prevalent of a crime. But then gang violence eventually rose with territory wars getting more violent, and it really culminated in the St. Valentine's Day massacre, in which 7 members of the Irish North Side and Chicago gang, they were encroaching on Al Capone's Chicago outfit, and in retaliation, the Chicago outfit murdered 7 members. Police could not outrun these bootleggers because with all the money they were making, they were able to soup up their cars. They were able to buy the new Ford V8 engines, and they would actually be able to afford modifications to their cars. And really, that was the creation of the sport of NASCAR, with these bootleggers souping up their cars. They started racing each other, and that's the creation of NASCAR. That's how it started. Prohibition itself ended in 1933 with the passing of the 21st Amendment that made alcohol legal again. Prohibition was really a big failure in the United States and really didn't do what Americans thought it might. And Americans just have too much of a desire for alcohol and to be banning it. So Henry Ford, we just got some early chapters. He introduced the assembly line in the automobile manufacturing industry. This made cars more affordable, more reliable. The Model T became a symbol of the 1920s, and 15 million of them were sold during this time, and was by far the most popular vehicle. Ford wasn't the only vehicle manufacturer at the time. GM was there, made Chevys and Cadillacs, but the Model T was really the original mass-produced car, and many people bought them. With automobiles, people could now travel further, faster. They could take vacations, which was really unheard of back then, because how were they going to take a vacation? How are they going to get there? I guess by train, but it was so much easier using a car. Americans did not have to live so close to their workplace. They could drive into town now and live out in the suburbs. They didn't have to live right in the middle of the city where their job is, so they could be close and walk. New businesses arose because of the popularity of the car. Gas stations needed to be built, roadside restaurants when you're traveling, new highways were built. So the car really changed everything. Cars represented that freedom and sense of adventure and gave people really the ability to enjoy their leisure time a little bit more. They could go to the beach, they could go to the countryside, they could get out of the city now that they have a car. So these are some of the advertisements of the cars. This is the basic Ford Model T. There was several different variations, and you can see how much they cost. $290 for like a single cab kind of a deal, or not a very spacious one, and then all the way up to $660 for this big sedan. This is actually a Ford Model T right here, restored, and you can see that they were so popular when you went somewhere and all the cars were parked. They all kind of looked the same because they were all the black Ford Model Ts. So how they found out which one was theirs, I'm not sure. So the car did not have to be the Model T, but the Model T was for the basic American with average means. But those who are wealthy kind of use the car as a status symbol. And you can see some of the fancy Rolls-Royce cars that were made, and some of the manufacturers that aren't around anymore, but they were really custom-made cars back then with such craftsmanship. And this is actually the Great Gatsby car, very famous car, but it just shows you the luxuriousness of the 1920s. Radio came into great popularity in the 1920s with the first public radio commercial radio station in the United States in Pittsburgh with the KDKA station. That was the first one in the United States. So right here. Radios were affordable to buy, and it really provided entertainment for families at home. They'd have broadcasts of shows, and you could listen to music. This was revolutionary. It really spread the culture of the United States, and it informed its citizens now a lot quicker. Instead of reading it from the paper, the government can just broadcast something on the radio. Movies became popular in the 1920s and started being made. At first, though, they were silent films and they didn't have any audio to them. So you go to the theater, it would be the images of the film would be projected, and a piano player or a small band would accompany the film. Charlie Chaplin, this fella right here, he was a famous silent movie star, and he was known for his comedic antics in the movies such as Gold Rush, The Kid. They're actually still pretty funny movies. It's just slapstick kind of comedy stuff. And then the first major film feature was The Jazz Singer, and this was the first movie with you could actually hear them talk in the movie, and it was called Talkies. Walt Disney's first animated film, Steamboat Willie, was also released in 1928. It was only 8 minutes long, but it was his first one. Sports became very popular in the 1920s, especially Major League Baseball. Baseball was definitely the most popular sport in the United States at this time, and it became a business, much like Major League sports are today. It wasn't just entertainment value and gave someone a pastime. It was became really about making money. The tickets to the game, baseball cards, and other merchandise were being sold. Gambling on the games were happening. Became a big part of American culture. And Babe Ruth was the star of it all. He was by far the most popular baseball player. He was by far the best baseball player with his phenomenal skills. He was a good pitcher. He could hit home runs. He was known for hitting home runs. And he hit 60 in a season in 1927, which is phenomenal. And he also led the New York Yankees to multiple championships in the 1920s. That concludes Chapter 8, Section 2.